Donald Trump says he's not thrilled by Israel's unprecedented strike against Hamas in the Gulf state of Qatar, a key American ally. He adds it was the lone decision of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. UN Security Council, it's also set to discuss the attack at an emergency meeting, the strike taking place Tuesday afternoon in the Qatari capital Doha, which has hosted a Hamas political office since 2012 under a US-supported arrangement. The group says its top leaders survived, but 5 lower-ranking members were killed.
Smoke and dust rises over Doha, the latest stage for Israel's hunt for Hamas. The Qatari capital has hosted several rounds of talks aimed at ending the war in Gaza. But after this Israeli strike, targeting the senior Hamas leadership, Qatar says peace is only further away.
Qatar will not tolerate any violation of its sovereignty. It will respond firmly to any reckless breach or aggression that threatens its security and undermines regional stability. Qatar reserves the right to respond to this blatant attack and will take all necessary measures to address it.
Several Middle Eastern states condemned the attack, and even the White House sent a strongly worded message.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal.
But in Israel, some relatives of hostages still held in Gaza didn't think so.
To be honest, I'm horrified at the idea that when we finally had an American-led deal that could have led to the release of all hostages, this is the action that took place. And this is why, again, when I have no regrets for these people whatsoever, I have no pity for them, I don't want to see them killed. I want to see everybody signing a deal that brings all hostages back.
I'm shaking with fear. It could be that at this very moment, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu basically assassinated my Matan, sealed his fate. Anyone who decides to deliberately endanger my Matan's life is murdering him. Why does the Prime Minister insist on blowing up every chance for a deal? Why?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he ordered the strike to make good on his promise to hit
terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
The ensuing war in Gaza has raged for almost 2 years now. The UN says famine is spreading in the Strip. According to Gaza's health ministry, the war has killed more than 60,000 Palestinians.
Adam Sahul was a special advisor in the Biden administration. He served at the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Agency for International Development. He's now with the Center for a New American Security. Adam, welcome. Tell me, we're hearing there that no senior leaders were taken out. Was this a gamble that hasn't paid off, if I can call it that?
Well, Ben, thanks for having me. Good morning. I think, what we're looking at is a Rubicon that has been crossed. Whereas in the past, Israel has taken action to eliminate Iran-backed proxies such as Lebanese Hezbollah and other parties to the conflict, including with its operations backed by the U.S. Against Iran. A U.S. ally, a Western ally, striking a major non-NATO ally in Qatar in the capital of Doha, is a big red line that's been crossed. And I think what's concerning is that, for regional allies and partners looking at what's happening today, questioning whether Israeli leadership is serious about peace and bringing the hostages home and ending the conflict, but then looking at Israel's actions, be it in continuing to strike civilians in Gaza with impunity, continuing to limit aid, as well as striking a major non-NATO ally in Qatar. I think we are far from looking at a situation where diplomacy is seizing the day.
But where could this lead? I mean, we're seeing one escalation after the next unprecedented moments, a momentous escalation in the Middle East right now. Is this something that could, in some way, unite Arab nations to the detriment of Israel in some way?
Well, Ben, for the last nearly 2 years, I think Arab and Turkish governments and peoples have been united in seeking a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. There is an Arab initiative that has been on the table that protects Palestinian sovereignty, facilitates the return of Israeli hostages and brings a lasting end to the conflict with security guarantees. There's, of course, the U.S.-backed proposal, which it appears Netanyahu and his government have seen to put in the shredder with the attack on Doha yesterday. And of course, there's EU leadership-backed efforts to recognize Palestinian statehood, to provide leverage in international diplomacy. But sadly, it seems that diplomacy by other means, by kinetic military effect, seems to be the playbook for Netanyahu.
The US, of course, is a key player in all of this. It seems Washington was notified but not consulted beforehand about these strikes. How will that impact the relationship between the US and Israel?
Well, I would say that it's highly questionable that an attack on a major non-NATO ally in Qatar, where the U.S. Is hosted in the Al Udeid air base, which, with the recent 12-day war between Israel and Iran, helped protect American service members, Qatari integrated air defense. That an attack by the Israeli Air Force would have taken place without some notification or with the knowledge of U.S. Central Command. But I think the statement by the White House, which essentially was an admission that perhaps the operation was a success, but the patient is dead, is just yet another data point that the Trump administration appears intent on enabling Netanyahu's worst instincts.
So, give me a feeling here. Do you see Trump changing his stance in any way as far as putting pressure on Netanyahu to end this war?
Well, it's clear that there was a U.S. deal on the table that Hamas appeared to be considering with support by Qatar, Egypt, and other Arab actors. What's concerning is that the war that has taken place after the Hamas attacks on October 7th has suited Netanyahu's political fortunes. Mm-hmm. And by extending this war, we have seen Netanyahu being able to hold on to power. But this is a war that's being fought in the name of the United States and Western citizens.
How do you mean?
Well, by providing military aid, particularly for offensive measures, be it in Gaza or taking place now in places like a major non-NATO ally in Qatar, there's nothing that the Israeli military or the Netanyahu government is doing that isn't backed by the United States. So now the question is whether the U.S. and European leaders are serious about using leverage, in particular the provision of offensive military aid and support to curb the worst instincts of Netanyahu.
Adam, thank you very much for your analysis, and thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Let's take you over to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Emily Gordine, and talk about the strike in Qatar first. Considering who was targeted and who died, how successful was the operation for Israel, would you say?
Well, Israel says it was targeting senior Hamas officials, and Hamas, meanwhile, has come out saying that none of its top officials were, in fact, killed. It didn't come out saying whether they were injured or not, but of course that raises questions over how successful this operation really was. Now, listening to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, a few hours after the strikes, he came out saying that this move, this operation, can, quote, open the door to an end of the war. It's very difficult to see how, but what this does essentially show is that the Israeli leadership certainly does seem to see this operation as a success. Now, Israel has a long track record of killing the leaders of Palestinian groups. That hasn't stopped these groups from essentially replenishing their ranks eventually. And you also have to keep in mind in this case, these Hamas officials were meeting in Qatar to discuss the latest US ceasefire proposal, and it's completely unclear now where that leaves the negotiations, spelling a lot of uncertainty, not only for the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza, but also for the 2 million Gazans themselves. Together, they've all really essentially been bearing the brunt of this 2-year-long war.
Yeah, let's pick up on that point. We heard in the report from a relative of a hostage worried this puts the hostages' lives in jeopardy yet again. Where are we at in ceasefire talks, or are talks still so far away?
Well, from a Hamas point of view, it's unclear how this strike may or may not have influenced the dynamics between Hamas leadership in Gaza and Hamas leadership abroad. But you also have to keep in mind that this strike occurred in Qatar, a country that has been crucial in mediating ceasefire talks over the past 2 years, essentially, and that to quite a successful degree, if you want, given that many Israeli hostages were in fact released and also humanitarian aid was able to get into Gaza. Now, this strike happened on its sovereign territory, and it is unclear how that will affect Qatar's abilities and also willingness to continue to mediate between the two sides. Qatar leadership has signaled that it wants to continue its efforts, but analysts certainly believe that it has pushed the prospect of a ceasefire deal further away.
And in the meantime, Gaza, what are you hearing from Israeli officials about the Gaza City offensive?
Well, the Israeli military yesterday ordered all of Gaza City's citizens to evacuate the area. This after 50 high-rise buildings were targeted over the last couple of days. Now, we have seen footage of convoys of Gazans leaving the city, but many of them are asking how and where to. According to the UN, the Israeli military occupies around or controls over 80% of the territory in Gaza, leaving very little space for the remaining 2 million Gazans who live there. And all of this is happening, of course, as famine is developing and is already underway in Gaza. So dire conditions. Now, Gazans, for their part, are desperate. They are hungry, and that, of course, also the hunger bit also makes it very difficult for people to actually move.
We'll have to leave it there. Emily Gordine in Jerusalem.